noticed that Punta Gorda makes it on a lot of best places to live lists while its neighbor, Port Charlotte, doesn't? Is there something wrong with Port Charlotte? Today we're going to talk about why it doesn't make these lists and how it's changing. Yo, I'm Adrienne, longtime Florida realtor, and I'm here to help you get your Florida life. Happy Wednesday, everyone. If you're new here, new videos come out every Wednesday. You can watch them anytime though. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell to get updated when new videos come out. Port Charlotte is a great place to live. It has great weather, friendly people, and areas with reasonably priced homes. There's also great boating in much of it. So why don't you hear of it the same way you hear of cities around it? If you are completely unfamiliar with Port Charlotte, let me help you get your bearings. It's north of Punta Gorda and south of Venice, Florida. Landmass-wise, it's fairly good size, but it still has a small town feel. If you're looking for loud nightclubs that go to 2 or 4 in the morning, I don't even know what time nightclubs go to anymore. But if you do and you love going out all night in Miami or Tampa, probably Port Charlotte is not for you. You should know that I'm going to talk about the biggest, most consistent complaint I get from people who want to live in a similar town like Port Charlotte, not necessarily the nightclub people. What I hear from talking to hundreds of people who are coming to this area over many years is, why is there no downtown in Port Charlotte? There's no sort of central location. I believe this is also a big reason Port Charlotte doesn't make those best of lists. There are great residential neighborhoods in Port Charlotte, but it doesn't have a town square or a main street to take pictures of, and those lists love pictures of cute downtowns. We're going to talk about that today because it's changing at what feels like a whiplash pace, and yet it's really not that fast because a lot of this is years in the making. We're also going to talk about how it may affect real estate, of course. I've already done a video on Sunseeker Resort, which is set to open in October. It's a resort coming to Port Charlotte on the harbor. If you're in town at all and you drive over the Peace River Bridge, you literally cannot miss it. Its website already has 7 restaurants listed on it, so it will give Port Charlotte quite a bit more to do. But today we are going to talk about the Promenades Mall. The Promenades Mall has been around since I was a kid. I'm going to give you a little history so when you hear about what we're going to do with it, you can know where it was, and then you can decide what you think about where it's going. And of course, I'll tell you my thoughts as well. The Promenades Mall is in the middle of Port Charlotte. It's across the street from Harbor Boulevard. It's currently a strip mall, so it has a Winn-Dixie, a Bell's, a nail salon. If you've been to a strip mall before, you know what it is. However, when I was a kid in the 80s, it was our mall. Now, it wasn't the kind of brightly lit mall you see in movies from back then, or perhaps you remember from back then, because Port Charlotte was a very small town. There was a movie theater that I believe, if I remember correctly, played 2 movies at a time, maybe twice a night, like 7 and 9. So you had 2 to choose from. And my biggest memory of it was the Little Professor bookstore. It was the only place around to get books. There was clearly no Amazon. There wasn't even, this is before, B. Dalton. It's before, of course, before Borders and all of that. And I love to go there because I liked my Sweet Valley High books and my Choose Your Own Adventure books. That's how long ago we are talking about. In around 1988, the Port Charlotte Town Center Mall opened up in Murdoch, about 10 minutes north of the Promenades. It was like a mall that you see in the 80s or 90s movies, or again, maybe you just remember them. It hurt the Promenades because the town really wasn't big enough for both. The Promenades Mall went downhill for a while, and then it became the strip mall you see today. Now, I'm quite sure there will be a future video about the Town Center Mall because there is a lot happening there, but not as much has been made public yet. So stay tuned because I am definitely watching that closely. Although the Promenades Mall is now less of a promenade than it is a strip mall, there is more space there than you think. It's actually about 26 acres, and a developer out of Miami named Jeff Moore is using $100 million to turn it into a mixed-use space. He got his permits a little over 2 weeks ago. The new Promenades is going to be called Parkside Village, and for the rest of this video, I'm going to call it Parkside Village so it doesn't get too confusing. It is going to have 800 apartments, a 60-key hotel, and 500,000 square feet of commercial space. The plan is to have outdoor cafes and shops. Now, when Sunseeker first got announced, they said all these things, they were going to do all these things, and it's changed. So this might change a little bit too, but it does sound like he's building something there. Now, let's talk about the effect it could have on Port Charlotte. If you look at a map, you can see that it really is in the middle of Port Charlotte. There was an article in the paper that was talking about how this will be the downtown that Port Charlotte has been looking for. And again, I think that could be very true. It will be a very different downtown than Punta Gorda has. Punta Gorda's downtown has a sort of quaint, historic feel, whereas what they're looking at for Parkside Villages looks to be more like an outdoor mall, which it once was, except maybe more modern and maybe even more like a European flair, it seems to. That's what it looks like to me. As always, there are people for it and against it. Those against it always worry that we are getting too big and losing how we used to be. Again, I would point out that this used to be an outdoor mall, so it is what it used to be. Granted, this looks to me much more modern. The other big fear is that traffic will get worse. This is probably true. However, it may not be as bad as feared. What's interesting is this land is near the hospitals and a lot of residential. With Sunseeker nearby and the new Parkside Villages coming in the middle of Port Charlotte, it's likely that many people can live closer to where they need to go, hence not traveling as far every time they get in their car. Speaking of which, we need to talk about real estate here. It is going to make the housing demands of the people working in Port Charlotte and in our hospitals easier to fulfill. We need apartments. We need to have places for young people to start out, and for people who are coming here for a year or two to work, we need a place for them to live. If you own a rental and you've watched rental prices soar over the past few years, you may see those numbers even out as we get more developments like this built in the area. But we are still a long way from meeting that need that's out there. And this project is just in the permit stage, so we have a couple of years before anything like that happens. If you have any questions, all my information is below. Thank you very much for watching. You can also leave me a comment. I will see you next Wednesday.